Hey everybody, welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I am your host Nick Henning, and this is the day 3.5 recap. Recap. This is a late recap because I woke up about 10 minutes before I needed to attend the morning ceremony today. The reason that I needed to attend the morning ceremony today was because I ended up winning my second ring of the event in the Earth event, which is pretty insane. Really exciting to double ring win again. Turns out actually there's another double ring winner this year. So first year Gray and I double ring winnered. This year there's at least two double ring winners. Maybe someone will double ring win again today, or maybe JC will go on to triple ring, which would be pretty insane. But yeah, let me run through my day yesterday. So yesterday was day 3. I played Earth. Earth started at 9 a.m. in the morning. They are doing a sort of like, if you played Earth, you know that it's like a synchronous game, right? But because it's a competitive event, they basically had some house rule that it was more or less being executed in a asynchronous format, I guess is the way you would say it, where it'd be like I would execute all my red actions, then you would, and then the player after you, and so on and so forth. So no one really knew how long this game was going to take. So they have 4-hour slots scheduled for the game just to be safe. So it started at 9 a.m. So it's like 9, 1, 5, and 9. Like could ostensibly go to midnight if these games are taking 4 hours. Fortunately, this is not how it works, even with the asynchronous thing. They were only 3-player games throughout the whole day. Again, I think it was a tournament with like 80 to 90 people, which seems to be kind of like the spot that a lot of tournaments are at this year. So 3 players, 3 players, 3 players, 3 players all the way through. And people were pretty quick in executing the actions on their turns. Usually it's most complicated if you're choosing the action, you have extra stuff going on, and then the other players just kind of executing their board, which is actually pretty quick. So I actually didn't mind the format at all. I thought that Earth was surprisingly good in person using this asynchronous format, and I definitely had my skepticism. So I was pleasantly surprised at how smoothly everything ran. I would say the lion's share of my games ended under 2 hours, including the final. I think only one of them went a little bit over 2 hours, and there's always a big break in between the events because of that 4-hour slot. So next year, I know that they can go down to shorter slots, which I think will be definitely beneficial. I like when the games are a little bit tighter paced. But no, I don't blame them for wanting to be a little bit cautious this year. Yeah, so my first game was the one that actually was the one I was probably closest to losing. I was in the third seat in this game, and the player in the second seat had like a full winter combo. They had an island that this player also was in the finals of Cascadia last year. Aaron, I believe, is his name. So I knew was a very good player. And yeah, the island that gives like 2 cubes every time you play a winter thing. He also played Tundra to discount all of his like winter cards by 1. He played 12 winter cards throughout the course of the game. He ended the game by playing the contiguous winter thing, and he played his board perfectly to score the maximum 24. He also was the first to claim one of the objectives. He claimed like a second one of the objectives. I think he actually claimed maybe 3 of the objectives, but like didn't even try for the 4th one because it was like water objective, and he was really heavy on winter. Yeah, he was like first on rainbow objectives or whatever. The problem that he had was that was his whole game plan. Claiming the objectives, the winter ring. His cards were not worth a ton. He ended the game well before I could finish my board. I was 2 cards short of finishing my board, which usually feels really bad. But I had enough resources going on. This game had like a very interesting, weird tempo in terms of resources. And I played several terrain cards that were worth a lot of points. I think I scored something like 49 points off of terrain cards this game. The player in the first seat, she unfortunately missed a couple plant actions because she was really narrowed in on making a really good terrain stack with that rewards the compost stack, and she had a huge compost stack, so she scored quite a lot off of that, but it kind of expensed the rest of her game in a way that she wasn't able to kind of keep up with the 2 of us. So it at the end, I kind of thought that he might take it, but I did think that I was pretty live, and I did end up winning by like a 10 to 15 points because I don't think I realized how poor the score was like on the actual pieces on his board. So just like the fundamental points on my board, even though I didn't get to fill it all out, were higher. I did a little bit better on the end game objectives, even though he was doing better in the in game objectives. So really tight game. I literally thought it was going to be a first round knockout. go from there to my second game. Am I drawing a complete blank on what happened in my second game, like top to bottom? I am. Maybe I'll come back to it. I don't have it. We're gonna go to the third game, the semifinal game, because I win the second game. Hooray me! In the third game, I played in the second seat, and the player to my left was the winner of the War of the Ring invitational event, which is pretty exciting for him. He planted all games. The only action he took all game was plant. He had 2 green things that gave him soil. The player to my right had kind of like a structure that he wanted to take red actions, and the player to my left had a way to like take advantage of those red actions to make sure that he just constantly was in the resources. The player to my right also had like green cards to make cubes and soil and everything like that. But he didn't take as many plant actions. You know, he had to get resources throughout the course of the game, was struggling with cards. Both of my opponents were struggling with cards. The player on my left literally ended the game with exactly 0 cards in hand. And when he was playing cards, like he wasn't looking at a grip like you normally do in Earth. He was just playing what he had in his hand. It would go into play, and that was the case. The problem that the player to my left had in C3 was that he played everything out to end the game as fast as possible, but these didn't meet the objectives in play. I think he only completed 1 of the 4 objectives, whereas I completed 3 or 4 of them. The player to my right also completed, I think, 3 of them. So even though there was such a huge pressure on it to end the game, and both the first player and I ended the game with, I think, 3 slots missing, the player to my left didn't get enough points in the course of the game, actually ended up in last place, ending the game with just not enough support that matched the objectives of the game. So you can't just, it turns out, you can't just plant and end the game to win. You do actually need to have cards that match. So if his cards had played a little bit more nicely with him, then he would have absolutely buried us and put us underground. However, he didn't have enough cards to really make any of those decisions, and so the deck is not so friendly as to make that happen. And then I ended up, same thing as the first game, I had a couple really big powerhouse terrains. One of them that was like the winter chain that went all the way around, that was like 18 or 20 points. And then one of them was for a number of red cards that an opponent played, so I copied the player 3's red cards and scored like 24 points or something absurd off of that. So again, another like almost 50 point terrain game. Oh no, I had over 50 points because I had a row of trees that was another 9 points there. So just a lot of in-game structure stuff, even though I was behind on like everything else, that put me over the top. I think I won maybe by like 20-ish points or something like that. So a comfortable enough victory, even though it felt really bad not finishing the island. I'm still not remembering game 2, so we're going straight to the final, ladies and gentlemen. In the final was PJ, who won the Cascadia ring last year, and Damien, who I played in Arnak round 2 the day before. So unsurprisingly, I know both of these guys are going to be good gamers. PJ has played almost as much online as I have, and I knows the deck really well, knows the islands really well. And so we start off, and my starting island choice is like one of my least favorite island choices. So I start with Hawaii, which I think is not terribly good. My starting hand is like, it's not awful, it's playable, but it's not super exciting either. I basically have like a discount on the thing that looks like the weed leaves. And the ability to draw cards when red actions are taken, which I suspected was going to happen a lot because PJ went for like full in on red actions with his starting island stuff, which I know that he doesn't normally like. I think he didn't have a great starting island set either. And so PJ started the game with a red action. I guess his starting hand also was not terribly friendly to him. And then Damien in seat 2, I believe, planted. I planted. And essentially what happened from that point forward with the tempo of that is that I ended up being plant player. I was way ahead in the number of plantings throughout the course of the game, like 3-4 cards over the other players when we got partway through. I got really lucky with drawing volcanic ground for 6 soil when I planted, and then I drew red gram for 4 more soil when I planted. So that was like 10 free soil that came my way. Not to mention that red gram was in italics, which is a colorful card, right? Red. and I went full in italics. That was one of the objectives of the game, and my end game objective was that. So I ended the game with 6 italics cards, so draw really, really lucky off the deck. One of the objectives was about playing different things in a certain column, and I had that just like unlock. My starting hand, like I said, was not great. I felt like from about a third of the way through the game to the end of the game, every time I drew cards, I drew into something that was an upgrade of something I already had. Like I had a plan that was like mapped out, and just things kept falling into my lap, falling into my lap, falling into my lap. I would say it was only about halfway through the game when I said to myself, I'm pretty confident I'm going to win this game. And not only did like things continue to break my way, but they broke my way harder and harder. So my opponents just ran out of time to execute really any of the actions that they wanted to do. I think that they played really well in terms of like managing what they had. Damien was doing some really cool stuff with like soil management and getting cubes. He had like lots of green things so that when I was taking the plan action, he had resources. He had lots of like good stuff going on, but just it took him too long to get online, I think. And he never really had the capacity, didn't have enough of a hand size to take a lot of plant actions himself. So didn't have the card flexibility, but he did have the resource flexibility throughout the course of the game. PJ, on the other hand, had a lot of cards, managed his hand really well. He was the only player that got the Condor objective of having like 20 plus cards in the end. And, you know, was doing it with like input and output of things. He also was like boxing me on actions. Like I was going to switch into trying to get the Condor, and he like started putting yellows into play. So he really was paying attention, like had an understanding of the thrum of the game. But because he didn't end up planting on that first turn, he just was always behind in terms of like what, you know, the pace was, because I kept planting and he would put something into play and not really be in a good position to then plant himself, even though he had resources. You know, stuff would have to get paid out. So I don't think his cards quite cooperated with him in the ways that mine did. And that really ended up making a pretty huge difference. And so there we have it, our 4th ring in 4 different events. We're not good at defending, but we are really good at claiming new stuff, which is really exciting. So I did say this was a day 3.5 vlog. My quick update for today is I got knocked out in round 1 of Terraforming Mars. My opponent started with Fusion Power as the first card they play. If you don't know the game, you need two electricity tags to do that. So they set it up with their Prelude cards, and then basically segued that into like a turn 3 AI Central, or maybe turn 4 or something like that. It was very, very early, and then just absolutely buried us under card advantage. He won by like 15 points over me. It was like pretty brutal thrashing. Try to hold on, but it just wasn't going to happen. But he's a friend, so I hope that he ends up going all the way. And he was in the Terraforming Mars final in year 1, so I know that he's got the chops to make it there. I'm going to spend the rest of the day kind of pulling myself together, and we will see how tomorrow's grand semifinal goes. They're going to pull at like midnight the event, so we have 2 chances to land on something that we like. We've got a lot of games out there that we like, a couple games we don't want to land on, and hopefully we can not play the cursed game or something of lower caliber this year. We will see. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good luck. Have a good day.